Hi, I'm Randy Reed. I'm the Executive Director of the National Lighting Bureau, and we are here at our inaugural Edison Awards. Originally, we were to do this at Light Fair to make the actual presentations, but with Light Fair being canceled, we're doing it through Zoom, the next best thing. I'd like to introduce our Director at Large, Mary Beth Gotti. Mary Beth was in charge of the Edison Awards, and Mary Beth, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Randy. It's my pleasure to really chair this inaugural year of the Tesla Awards here in 2020. And, you know, just a little bit, why the Tesla Awards? Why another lighting award program? And, you know, you think about, the basic tenet of the National Lighting Bureau, it's high benefit lighting. And when you think of some of the key themes today, one of the big ones is the value of lighting. How does lighting make the world better for people, for the environment? So we want to highlight the value of lighting in these projects, but above and beyond that, we wanted to keep it simple. You know, it could be new construction, it could be retrofit. It really gives us the opportunity to share best practices too. You know, what have you done that works? Have you done things that didn't work? Any surprises? What about collaboration? You know, when you come up with the design, who else was involved in really, evaluating the project? So we're really pleased to be part of this, and we're looking forward to, again, fine-tuning it and getting better and better each year. I'd like to introduce our judges. We had 5 great judges. We had John Paul Friesenier from Lighting Research Center, Ruby Jadwit, who was a director of the NLB, Howard Lewis, vice chair, the NLB, Terry McGowan, the director, and then Jane Jordan, treasurer, all of the NLB. So I thank them very much for their efforts in judging these projects, and they did an absolutely fabulous job. It's my pleasure to introduce this award winner, Ford Foundation Center for Social Justice, just an amazing project. The lighting designers were Paul Marantz, along with Keith Forrest, and Zack Zanolli from Fisher Marantz Stone. So again, Paul, great to have you here. And I'd like to open up the floor and let you start talking, about the project. And I know you had a few additional comments as well. So welcome, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. This was a project that was dear to our hearts because it is an office building that was designed in 1963 and completed in 1968. So it's sort of half a century old. And it was designed by Kevin Roche and his partner, John Dinkaloo, who were successors to Eero Saarinen, a great mid-century architect. And it was a very important building because it was in many ways a gift to the city. So as you can see, it's 12 stories tall. It is in the form of a 200-foot square, and it has office wings on 2 sides, and they wrap around a 10-story high atrium with a garden in the bottom. It was the first sort of mid-century modern building to break from the model of the Seagram building or Lever House or any of the very first and very fine early modern architecture office buildings. So this was a model for an office building which was meant to benefit all of the people who worked there. And the idea was that the building was transparent. A foundation is an institution that gives away money. And the relationship of Ford Foundation to the people who benefit was meant to be transparent. It was all obviously money from Henry Ford and Henry Ford II, actually, but none of the Fords were in control of the distribution of money. It always had a separate board of directors and a mission that was independent of any politics that the Ford Motor Company might have had. And it was so the building is all glass, and because the 2 wings are very thin, everyone had a view outside. And so this was a real breakthrough in the design of office buildings. As you can see here at just at dusk in New York with the Chrysler Building in the background, you can see into every room of this building. So transparency was the key. And we were called because the mission of the foundation was changing slightly to benefit groups in the world that were lacking in funding or lacking in development, so that the instead of providing fancy TV shows for public television, it would have other missions that were more useful and more generous to the to all the societies of the world. Next slide, please. This is the view of the garden, which is right on the street and is open to the public at all times. And it was designed by the famous landscape architect Dan Kiley, who unfortunately did not have a terrific handle on species of plants that might survive in this environment. So there were lots of adjustments made to the garden, but the garden needed a major rehabilitation, and it needed to be made accessible to all. As you can see, there is a pool at the bottom of the stairs, and all of those things needed to be made accessible. Next slide, please. So at the top of the atrium, there is a row of lighting for the plantings, but as you can see from this view across 42nd Street, you can see straight through the building. Now, of course, all the lighting in the building was either tungsten, incandescent, or it was fluorescent. All the office lighting was fluorescent troffers of one sort or another, as was typical for the moment. And some special offices got better, more beautifully designed fixtures. All the materials are very rich, and all the materials are very warm. And so as we transitioned from tungsten lamps, incandescent lamps, and fluorescent lamps, and some metal halide lamps to an all LED solution, we had to be very careful about the color temperature and the color rendering of all of the lamps. It has been very difficult in lighting design to keep the palette under control, because different LEDs with the same color temperature rating don't necessarily exhibit the same visible color. And so we entered this job, 4 or 5 years ago, with a palette of LED systems that were beginning to become mature. And we think that we're still not in the golden age of LED light fixtures and light sources. We're just rounding the far corner of the track, and we're hoping that better quality and better color consistency is yet to come. Next slide, please. So this is the reception room. This was a typical mid-century modern building with a suspended ceiling, with lots of downlights, with lots of troffers, and we wanted to simplify as much as possible the lighting language of this, and do it under very controlled scenarios, so that the building looks simpler, not more complex. Next slide, please. So this is a view across the atrium. As you can see, there is lots of art, there is lots of planting, and there is a whole story about the fundamental task of the foundation to represent all kinds of people. The main architectural change comes in the office, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So this is the this is inside the building. Remember, the public can come all the way up to this glass line in the atrium, and then there's control at this glass line. This was a rendering of the reception corridor that opens onto the elevators and all of the other elements that you see. As you can see, the materials are all warm and all well thought through. Gensler was the architect and took it upon themselves. And so we had, for example, we were able to source a downlight, which was smaller, great benefit of LEDs, but still reasonably glare-free, not always the benefit of LEDs. And so the main downlight is a recessed, a slightly recessed 4x4. And where we wanted a line of light for wall washing purposes, as you can see on the right, it was allowed to speak with a bolder voice to be seen as light. Next slide, please. This is one of the corridors on the upper floor. As you can see, there is a fabulously beautiful pendant made of brass that was in all of the private offices. Now, when the mission of the building to be visible throughout, when the building was actually built, there were a lot of private offices, and over the desks there were these fantastic fluorescent pendants. We had them rebuilt, and then we moved them into the public spaces because the number of private offices was significantly reduced in the building, and it was repurposed. And one of the discussions that I'm sure will ensue is that as a result of the coronavirus, we will have to think a little more about how close office workers are to one another, what kind of distancing is in potential. I will explain how I think that might work here in a minute. Next slide, please. So this is the typical office floor, renewing the troffers that were originally in the ceiling. Even though the ceilings are not especially high, we hoped that we could do it with a simple pendant. So if you look at the next slide, you will see a lighting plan which shows one light fixture for every bay of desks, about 30 feet apart, and we wanted the fixture to be soft in its distribution, not to be glary in any way, but we had this very large spacing as a criteria because we wanted to really minimize the number of light fixtures on the floor. As you can see at the perimeter, there are little downlights. There was always imagined to be a necklace at the facades, but in the office itself, a very simple solution. And so, next slide, please. We developed a pendant, which you can see here, as all the metals in the building are brass, and so we decided to keep that. We have one fixture every 30 feet, and in order to avoid the tremendous light gradient that there would be on the ceiling with that kind of spacing, we developed a fixture, next slide please, that had, as you can see, as an uplight, 2 lines of LED with lenses so that we could vector the light as far across the room as possible. And so there are twin LED light sources, and the distribution gradient worked out to be perfect. Then there is a downlight component and a brass louver to reduce the glare. So it's a simple form, and its main job was to solve the problem of the uplight distribution. It's 26 inches below the ceiling, and that is the kind of the real base idea of the general lighting for this building, and we were quite pleased with the result, and obviously you folks were as well. Next slide. So there is, because art has always been part of the mission and is more more so now than ever. There is now a gallery, which has changing exhibits, and the artists are all representative of the countries that the foundation is supporting. So there is a visual component to this, which we were very happy to help, and which we travel back to the foundation to focus each time the exhibit is changed. And so that's the quick version of the lighting system for the Ford Foundation.
A quick question for you, Paul. You know, how much input from other stakeholders did you have for the design, or who did you have to get? Did you have to get approval for the lighting design? Did anyone else?
Well,
have input?
Darren Walker, the chairman of the Ford Foundation, was very much involved in the project because he's in charge of the reinvention of the Ford Foundation into the Ford Foundation for Social Justice. Gensler was a wonderful and very earnest colleague, I would say, and I think we probably turned through 6 or 7 iterations before we got to the one that we all could buy into. The number of people who work at the Ford Foundation for the Ford Foundation has been seriously reduced over the years. All the stakeholders had a perspective, but management of Ford was key.
And I noted, or what you noted, that you achieved the USGBC LEED Platinum for this particular building. Any big challenges in achieving that level?
Well, I mean, the great benefit of the LED source is that it has a terrific efficacy if used well, and so the efficacy was key. I can't say that there was any special challenge in meeting all the criteria for various awards that it was submitted for. But it is a very green. It went from being a very ungreen building with plenty of incandescent lamps and retrofit lamps and all kinds of shenanigans that buildings go through before they manage to get themselves put together with new and better light sources.
Terrific. Well, congratulations again on an absolutely beautiful design.
Well, thank you.
The question I had is certainly controls related. It looks like the project controls would be an important element there. But my one question would be, today, you know, there's a move to do white tuning and, of course, color tuning. But in a project like this, where your concern was matching colors of LED, do you think using white tuning capabilities would have allowed you to do that easier today?
I don't know, because we have looked at various white tuning fixtures, tried to relate the chroma of one to the other and find out, and have discovered it's really difficult. We were very happy to get control of the LEDs that don't change their color in this project, and that's where I think we have to begin. If we're going to start moving white, that's great, but we really have to have some kind of standard and some kind of ability to ensure that the various fixtures that we choose will work well together, will cohabit, and it's not so easy.
Yeah, it's good points. Thanks.
I understand it. You know, we had white tuning with tungsten lamps, right? Dim it, it gets warm, and yep. we're still stuck in that model. And I understand it. It's because it's our relationship to candlelight and fire and all those nice warm low level tones. So I think we'll get there. I'm not sure we're there yet.
Great, thanks.
And while I'm on this horse, I want to ride the horse about when we have to come to replace a fixture, a white tuning fixture, in 8 years or 6 years or whenever something goes wrong. how lucky will we be to find something that does what all the other fixtures in the room are doing?
Paul, this is Terry McGowan.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, did you keep color temperature consistent in all the spaces, or was there some variation depending upon the application?
Except for the gallery, which has a slightly cooler color temperature. It's all the same. It's all one color.
Okay. Good.
I mean, imagine if you go back to the beginning slide where you're looking at the building from the exterior and everything is exposed. You really can't stand to have multiple versions of white in the picture.
Yeah, good point.
Paul, this is Ruby Jedwith. I have a really quick question for you. The beautiful project, by the way, first of all. And what is the CRI you were actually achieving over here?
We were shooting for 90 plus.
Okay.
And more or less we've got it.
For the whole area, or the various part of the different, you're using a different CRIs?
90, it was 90 or better all the way. Okay.
So that's why we're looking into more warmer tone, actually, because it's give you a better CRI.
Wait a minute. The color rendering index is not the same as the color temperature, and you can get good CRI in various whites. Obviously, you can't do it if you want a super warm number, but you can certainly do it in the range between 3,000 and 3,200 Kelvin. That range.
It's a beautiful project, by the way. Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have one more question for Paul? Okay. Hearing none. Paul, before we go, you had a few things you said at the beginning that you maybe want to say again. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but say to the industry, this will be a great time.
Well, I'm saying to the industry that this is a very challenging time for you. It's a challenging time for everyone, and we, all designers like us bank on certain levels of quality from the people we specify, and we always had a roster of suppliers, most of them in the United States or in Europe in some cases, and now that much of the product that gets installed is sourced from Asia and is not, I think, subject to the same quality controls that we were used to. And that people who are working very hard to generate, excuse me, high quality projects are really having a tough time. So it's a little frightening to be attempting to do the things we attempt to do unless we can depend on consistency and quality from the manufacturers.
Okay.
That's the short version of it.
Yeah, it's where we are, and I appreciate you bringing that out because.
Well, thank you.
That is the state of our industry today. So.
Yep.
Okay, Paul, this concludes our presentation. We have an award for you that we'll be receiving here in a couple weeks. We'll send it out. We'll send all 5 of them, I guess, to your office. But thank you very much for this.